You know, when you walk through a major city at night, uh, you see the skyline.
Right, the glowing windows, the massive
Yeah.
skyscrapers.
All the steel bridges.
Yeah.
It all feels incredibly solid. I mean, it gives you this illusion of absolute permanence.
It really does. It feels like the
Mhm.
city has, simply always been there and always will be. We're wired to trust the physical things we can actually see and touch.
Exactly. But what you don't see is everything keeping that illusion alive.
Hmm.
You don't see the thousands of miles of fiber optic cables buried right underneath the concrete.
Or the pressurized water mains.
Right. Or the invisible radio frequencies that are constantly bouncing between cell towers just to, keep the traffic lights synchronized.
Hmm.
We live completely oblivious to the invisible infrastructure holding our physical world together.
That is until the Wi-Fi drops out during a crucial meeting.
Oh, yeah. Always the worst timing.
Right. Or the water stops running. When the system breaks, suddenly the invisible becomes very, very visible.
And usually very expensive.
Absolutely.
Well, welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you. We have an incredibly dense stack of material today, all pulled from the morning briefing for Saturday, July 18th, 2026.
It's a packed briefing.
It really is. And our mission today isn't just to, read a list of the day's events. We're going to extract the hidden connective tissue binding these seemingly random stories together.
The invisible infrastructure.
Exactly. We're going to look at how invisible infrastructure, both technological and institutional, is quietly reshaping our physical world, our energy grids, our classrooms, and ultimately our health. Okay, let's unpack this.
It's the perfect lens for this briefing, really, because today's reports start with some extremely loud physical shocks to the global system. But, if you look closely, the real story is always about the quiet digital machinery grinding away underneath.
We're seeing that play out right now with the intense geopolitical tremors in the Middle East. And actually, just to set the ground rules, as we look at the clash between the U.S. and Iran, or the leadership shakeups in the U.K. that we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, that's important to clarify.
Right. I want to make sure you know that our goal today isn't to weigh in on the politics or take sides. We don't endorse any of the political viewpoints here. We're just here to look under the hood at the physical and digital mechanics driving these events, based strictly on the source material.
Right. We are treating this as a strictly impartial breakdown of the systems at play.
And the facts on the ground are incredibly tense. I mean, we are looking at a seventh consecutive night of U.S. strikes on Iranian desalination plants.
Seventh night. Wow.
Yeah, and there is no end in sight to this renewed conflict over the Strait of Hormuz. Plus, we've got Kuwait stepping in, heavily condemning an Iranian attack on its own desalination facility. They're calling it a blatant violation of international law.
Well, you have to look at the specific targets there. Desalination plants. In that region, water isn't just a resource, it is the ultimate critical infrastructure.
Right, because it's literal survival.
Exactly. And this all follows the total collapse of a ceasefire that was just brokered back in June. And now you have a senior Iranian military advisor publicly warning that continued American strikes will trigger a full-scale Iranian offensive within days.
Which is a massive disruption to global oil and commercial shipping through arguably one of the most critical maritime choke points on Earth.
Absolutely.
But the part that really caught my eye wasn't just the military posturing, it was the tech thread. Because naval forces and commercial shippers rely heavily on satellite-linked tracking to navigate that strait.
Right, the AIS system.
Yeah, but because of the conflict, commercial shippers are increasingly using GPS spoofing to obscure their actual positions.
What's fascinating here is that this is an electronic warfare tactic that is now bleeding directly into commercial industry. GPS spoofing isn't just jamming a signal so you disappear from the map.
Like a smokescreen.
Right, it's not a smokescreen. It's actively broadcasting fake coordinates to confuse other navigation systems. You are literally tricking the satellites into telling everyone else you are miles away from where you actually are.
I was trying to wrap my head around this earlier. Because it's not just like turning off your headlights on a crowded highway at night so nobody sees you.
No, it's much worse.
It's like projecting a hologram of your car 3 lanes over while you drive blind in the dark, and you're just hoping a massive oil tanker doesn't accidentally merge into your real physical location.
That is exactly the danger. And it really highlights how quickly a physical geopolitical standoff transforms into an invisible digital crisis. The entire infrastructure of global trade relies on absolute data trust. When you compromise the GPS data, the physical ships are suddenly flying blind.
Are we completely taking this unglamorous engineering, these invisible data points, for granted until disaster actually strikes.
I mean, yes, we absolutely are. Geopolitical and natural events are no longer just physical things happening in a vacuum. They are entirely mediated by hidden digital infrastructure that we only ever notice when it bends or breaks.
That reliance on invisible systems perfectly connects to the political earthquake happening over in the UK right now, too. Andy Burnham has just been confirmed as the new Labour leader.
Making him the UK's incoming prime minister.
Right. He replaces Keir Starmer. And notably, this makes Burnham the UK's 7th prime minister in a single decade.
7 in 10 years. The turnover rate alone represents a massive institutional strain. But Burnham is coming in with a clear mandate. He wants to bring, quote, hope in every heart, and crucially, to shift political and economic power away from London and out to local regions.
But I'm looking at this from the tech infrastructure angle, and I have to ask how that localized vision actually survives reality. Tech firms are watching Burnham incredibly closely regarding the UK's Online Safety Act and its stance on AI regulation.
Because he's inheriting a government mid-negotiation on these massive digital guardrails.
Exactly. How do you build local, regional power structures when the tech you're trying to govern, like AI and the internet, is inherently borderless and invisible?
It's the ultimate paradox for a modern leader. You are trying to assert physical, localized jurisdiction over a digital realm that fundamentally ignores geography. Tech companies are nervous because, well, changing leaders mid-negotiation on AI regulation means the invisible rules of the road might completely change overnight.
Speaking of invisible rules of the road keeping us safe, we just saw this digital infrastructure tested by a literal physical earthquake.
The one in Mexico.
Yeah, a 7.4 magnitude shallow quake struck off Mexico's Pacific coast near Puerto Madero in Chiapas. It was powerful enough to shake buildings all the way down in Guatemala City and El Salvador.
That's a huge radius.
And within 32 minutes, it generated at least 4 aftershocks ranging between 4.5 and 6.1, and it triggered a massive tsunami warning.
Yet, within minutes of that initial rupture on the seafloor, coastal communities had alerts buzzing on their phones. The evacuation protocols were initiated almost instantly.
See, how does that actually work mechanically? Because it feels like magic to just, get a text message that the ocean's about to rise.
It's a marvel of unglamorous engineering, really. It's a network of seafloor sensors and surface buoys. The sensors sit miles down on the ocean floor, constantly measuring the weight and pressure of the water above them.
Okay.
So when a massive volume of water is displaced by an earthquake, the pressure on that sensor changes. The sensor pings the buoy on the surface, the buoy bounces the signal to a satellite, the satellite hits a land station, and the alert hits your phone. We are talking milliseconds to process a massive physical threat into digital data.
And we completely take this for granted. We don't think about the seafloor sensor until the Earth literally splits open. And if that sensor fails, or if the power grid goes down,
people simply don't evacuate. We are entirely at the mercy of systems we never see.
It's terrifying. And those disruptions ripple out in ways you wouldn't expect. Look at how all these events are hitting the education sector right now.
Right, the trickle-down effect.
Because of the conflict in the Middle East, school districts are suddenly having to cancel or completely reassess their international travel and study abroad programs.
And because of the GPS spoofing and the threat to the Strait of Hormuz, global oil prices spike.
Exactly. And that fuel spike immediately squeezes the budget of any school district running a large fleet of buses this fall. Meanwhile, that Mexico earthquake is forcing school facilities teams thousands of miles away to urgently review their own seismic and fire egress drills.
The physical, the political, and the technological are all sharing the exact same nervous system.
But keeping that nervous system alive requires an unfathomable amount of energy. Which brings us to a historic tipping point in global power generation.
This is one of those underlying shifts that changes the trajectory of everything else we've talked about today.
According to Ember Energy's 2025 Global Electricity Review, renewables have officially overtaken coal in the global electricity mix for the first time in a century.
A huge milestone.
It really is. Renewables hit 33.8%, edging out coal at 33.0%.
And the driving force there is unequivocally solar energy. Solar covered 83% of the entire rise in global electricity demand last year.
83%.
Yeah. On top of that, new battery storage installations hit a record 110 gigawatts. To put that in perspective, that is the largest annual expansion of any power technology on record. We have actually reached a point where clean generation is scaling faster than baseline demand growth.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I was looking at these numbers, and I realized We're witnessing a historical accident of timing.
How so?
If the AI revolution had happened 10 years ago, the global energy grid would have completely collapsed under the weight of it. I mean, the only reason we could even sustain the massive server farms required for this explosive AI arms race is because we spent the last decade making solar energy cheap and scalable.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The invisible infrastructure of cheap renewable energy is the literal fuel for the most resource-intensive technological race in human history.
And this AI race is absolutely cutthroat right now. I mean, look at Google. They just had to delay their flagship Gemini 3.5 Pro model by several months because internal testing showed it fell short on coding performance and complex reasoning.
And the market reaction was brutal.
Yeah, when the news broke, Alphabet shares dropped 4%, which wiped out roughly $200 billion in market value.
$200 billion evaporated because a software release was pushed back.
It's wild.
So the markets have baked the assumption of flawless, constant AI advancement into the valuation of these tech giants.
But the punishment from the market seems so severe. Why such a massive hit for a delay? I mean, Google delaying Gemini while OpenAI, Meta, and Moonshot AI drop new models is like a runner tripping in a 100-meter dash while the rest of the pack just keeps accelerating.
That's exactly it. Because in AI development, if your foundational reasoning and coding capabilities are flawed, you can't just patch it later with a quick software update. To use a physical metaphor, Google delaying Gemini to fix reasoning issues isn't like delaying the paint job on a new house. It's like a contractor realizing the concrete foundation of a skyscraper is crumbling while the steel framing is already going up. You have to halt all construction, tear it back down to the base, and fix the foundation even if your competitors are already building their roofs.
And the competitors are definitely building. Over in China, Moonshot AI just released Kimi K3. This is a 2.8 trillion parameter open source model.
Positive.
For those of us who aren't software engineers, what does trillion parameter actually mean in practice?
Think of parameters as the synaptic connections in a human brain. They represent the model's ability to recognize patterns, grasp nuance, and understand complex logic. A 2.8 trillion parameter model has a staggering level of cognitive depth compared to the models we were using just 2 years ago.
And Kimi K3 also features a 1 million token context window. From my understanding, the context window is basically the AI's short-term memory during a single conversation. Yeah. So 1 million tokens means you could, upload a dozen massive textbooks or thousands of pages of financial records all at once.
Yes, and it remembers everything in those documents while answering your questions about them. Independent reviewers are already saying it beats several top-tier systems on coding tasks.
It is a phenomenal leap in capability. And remember, it's open source.
Right. This isn't locked behind a corporate paywall. Researchers and developers globally can download the weights and build on it.
Which accelerates the adoption rate immensely. And we are seeing that adoption push all the way down to the local level. The National Science Foundation just awarded $11 million to the Computer Science Teachers Association.
That's a huge grant.
Yeah, they are launching AI Professional Development Weeks to train key 12 teachers in foundational computer science and AI.
And they are rolling this out in Indiana, South Carolina, Minnesota, New Jersey, Iowa, and Illinois to start. The goal is to train up to 3,000 teachers directly.
Right, and if you do the math, assuming each teacher sees about 200 students a year, this initiative could reach up to 600,000 kids.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what stands out to you? Is it the trillion parameter models fighting for dominance, or the fact that 600,000 kids are about to get their hands on this tech in school?
I mean, part of me is incredibly anxious looking at this massive rollout. We are handing these incredibly potent trillion parameter tools to millions of teenagers. But as we're about to discuss, the institutions meant to protect those same kids are fundamentally broken.
That is the terrifying friction point of today's briefing. We are rapidly scaling up complex technological systems, while our traditional oversight systems are failing to do the bare minimum.
Exactly. Let's look at the Department of Education. Their Office for Civil Rights just launched 20 directed investigations into K-12 school districts nationwide.
20 investigations all at once.
Yeah, they're investigating how these districts handle reports of adult misconduct towards students. And the mechanism of failure they uncovered is just infuriating.
They found a systemic pattern of districts dodging accountability through a practice known as quiet transfers.
Right. Can you explain the mechanics of a quiet transfer? Because it sounds like a bureaucratic loophole.
That's exactly what it is. Under Title IX, which is the federal civil rights law protecting students from sex-based discrimination and harassment, schools are legally obligated to investigate credible reports of misconduct.
Right, obvious.
But instead of conducting investigations that might lead to a localized PR scandal or legal liability, these districts were quietly transferring the accused staff members to different schools entirely.
It is bureaucratic self-preservation at the cost of student safety. You aren't solving the problem, you are just moving the threat to a new, unsuspecting population of kids just to protect the institution's image.
The Department of Education issued new guidance stating that districts have to stop these transfers and report accurately, or they risk losing their federal funding. But it really highlights a deeper vulnerability. Institutions, whether they are school districts or massive corporations, consistently ignore the weak links in their own chains.
We are seeing that exact same pattern of backdoor exploitation in the cybersecurity updates today.
Oh, absolutely.
The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, issued a July 19 deadline for federal agencies to patch a critical zero-day vulnerability in Microsoft SharePoint Server.
And this specific vulnerability, CVE 2026-58644, carries a severity score of 9.8 out of 10.
9.8.
Yeah, that is essentially a 5-alarm fire in the cybersecurity world.
I want to clarify some of the jargon here for a second. A zero-day vulnerability basically means the software creators have had 0 days to fix it, right?
Yeah.
The hackers found an unlocked door in the system before the security guards even knew the door existed.
Precisely. Microsoft confirmed this flaw was being actively exploited by attackers before any patches were even written. And SharePoint Server is essentially the digital filing cabinet for a massive portion of the corporate world. It holds documents, intranet data, HR records.
Right.
This flaw allows an attacker to remotely write and execute their own malicious code directly onto the server without even needing a username or password.
And the real-world consequences of these unpatched perimeters are everywhere. Coca-Cola's Fairlife dairy subsidiary just had to halt dairy production across the entire United States because of a ransomware attack.
Wow.
Just a note, their Canadian lines and product safety remain unaffected, but attackers gained unauthorized access to their U.S. production systems, effectively freezing the physical creation of milk and dairy products.
It's the invisible digital infrastructure shutting down the physical supply chain.
But the story that really drove this home for me is what happened at Ernst & Young. They are one of the biggest accounting and professional services firms in the world. They just had to notify clients that their sensitive data, tax records, investment holdings was exposed in a breach.
But the hackers didn't break into Ernst & Young's main network.
No, they didn't even try the front door. The hackers broke into a third-party IT support ticket platform that Ernst & Young was using, and they downloaded the client files from there. This just blows my mind. Why do huge, well-funded entities, whether it's an international accounting firm or a local school district, keep falling for the exact same trap of ignoring the weak links in their chain? The Ernst & Young vendor breach is like installing a state-of-the-art retinal scanning titanium vault door on the front of your bank, but then giving a master key to the dog walker who proceeds to lose it on the street.
It's because securing the perimeter of a modern digital enterprise is nearly impossible now. Modern businesses don't exist in a single building anymore. They rely on dozens of third-party software vendors for HR, IT support, payroll, communications.
Right.
Hackers know that a global accounting firm spends millions on its main defenses, so they don't attack the strongest point. They look for the unpatched IT tool or the minor vendor with lower security standards, and they just slip in through the side window.
It's the exact same mechanism as the school districts. Bad actors, whether they are cyber criminals or predatory staff, consistently target the unmonitored peripheries. They exploit the quiet transfer or the forgotten software vendor. We build these massive, complex systems, but we leave the side gates completely unattended.
This raises an important question, though, challenging us to consider how we structure accountability in an interconnected world when the threats are always coming through the back door.
It is a heavy dose of reality to process. Between geopolitical conflict, failing institutional accountability, cyber vulnerabilities, and an AI arms race. I mean, you read a briefing like this and it feels like the systems are just buckling.
They are definitely under immense stress, but historically, when human beings are faced with overwhelming systemic anxiety, we don't just panic. We tend to do two things simultaneously. We seek out communal escapism to ground ourselves, and we push the boundaries of science to find a way out.
Which perfectly transitions us to the final section of today's deep dive, because this upcoming weekend is an absolute masterclass in pop culture escapism and cultural convergence. We are looking at a weekend where millions of people are choosing to focus on shared communal experiences.
The sheer volume of major cultural events happening simultaneously right now is just staggering.
Let's just run down this list. On Sunday, we have the first ever 48-team FIFA World Cup final happening at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. It is Spain versus Argentina. Face value tickets are starting at $1,200 just to sit in the upper deck.
Wow.
And the halftime show features Shakira, Madonna, and BTS all sharing the stage.
You have international sports, multiple generations of pop royalty, and global fan bases converging in a single physical location.
At the exact same time, Christopher Nolan's new film, The Odyssey, just pulled in $17.6 million in Thursday previews alone.
Incredible.
It's heading for a $120 million opening weekend. It's got an insane cast. Matt Damon, Tom Holland, Zendaya, and Robert Pattinson.
Industry tracking expects it to be Nolan's biggest domestic debut since The Dark Knight Rises back in 2012.
And if you look at the music drops, July 24 is going to be absurd. Charlie XCX, Tyla, and The Strokes are all releasing highly anticipated albums on the exact same day.
That's quite a lineup.
And then on July 31, we get a new Ariana Grande single dropping on the exact same day, The Spider-Man. Brand new day trailer hits theaters.
It's a complete saturation of entertainment.
So what does this all mean? As I was reading through this massive list of pop culture milestones, I realized there is a beautiful contrast here. While we are all understandably distracted by Tom Holland and Zendaya or a historic World Cup match, there is a quiet, completely unglamorous convergence happening in medical science that is literally going to save lives.
Exactly. The human ingenuity and capital we pour into entertainment is mirrored by the quiet ingenuity we pour into medicine. Researchers just unveiled a breakthrough AI model in the journal Nature Medicine called Compass.
Now, we were talking about AI earlier in terms of corporate arms races and coding tools. But Compass is doing something profoundly different. Tell us how this model actually works.
So Compass is a pan-cancer AI model. The researchers trained it on over 10,000 tumor samples across 33 different types of cancer.
Okay.
Its primary function is to analyze the complex gene expression within a specific tumor and forecast whether that patient will respond to immunotherapy.
And the mechanism behind predicting immunotherapy response is notoriously difficult, right? Because tumors constantly mutate and evade the immune system.
It is incredibly complex. Up until now, oncologists have had very few reliable tools to predict success in advance. It's largely been a process of trial and error.
Which is brutal for the patient.
Right. This means patients often endure costly, physically exhausting treatment trials with highly uncertain outcomes. But Compass is able to recognize the invisible molecular patterns across those 10,000 samples. It significantly outperformed all existing prediction methods in clinical validation.
That is a fundamental game changer. It means doctors can match patients to the exact treatments most likely to work on day one. It spares patients from suffering through months of therapies that were never biologically going to help them.
It is the perfect application of AI pattern recognition applied to biology.
And that isn't even the only medical breakthrough in the briefing. Researchers also published an incredible discovery regarding a drug called KCL-286.
This one is fascinating.
Now, I was looking at the notes on this, and I'm genuinely struggling to understand the biology here. KCL-286 was originally developed and tested to treat spinal cord injuries.
Right.
But the briefing says it is showing immense promise for Alzheimer's disease. How on earth does a drug meant for physical trauma to the spine do anything for a cognitive, neurodegenerative disease like Alzheimer's? The mechanism just doesn't make sense to me.
It sounds totally counterintuitive, but it all comes down to cellular inflammation. While a spinal cord injury is acute trauma and Alzheimer's is a progressive disease, they both trigger massive destructive inflammatory responses at the cellular level. In recent mouse studies, researchers discovered that KCL-286 actually repaired DNA damage and blocked the specific inflammatory pathways that drive Alzheimer's progression.
So the underlying biological mechanism, the inflammation, is the shared connective tissue between two totally different conditions.
Precisely. And this offers a massive injection of hope in Alzheimer's research, which has suffered through decades of failed drug development. But here is the most crucial part of this convergence. Because KCL-286 was already developed for spinal injuries, it has already passed human safety trials.
Oh, wow. Wait, really? So they don't have to start from scratch?
Exactly. By bypassing the initial phase 1 safety hurdles, they can accelerate this drug into Alzheimer's clinical efficacy trials years faster than a brand new compound.
It proves that the answers we are desperately searching for often lie in places we never thought to look. Just as pop culture sees all these different genres and fan bases colliding this weekend at the World Cup and the box office, the medical field is finding immense hope through scientific convergence. Safety data from a spinal cord lab is literally accelerating the timeline to treat Alzheimer's,
It's the power of cross-pollination. When you break down the silos between different fields of study, you find the invisible infrastructure that connects them.
which brings us full circle. I want to thank you, the listener, for coming along on this deep dive with us today. We started by looking at the massive, invisible infrastructure of our physical world, the underwater tsunami buoys, the GPS spoofing signals, the power grid, and we ended with the microscopic infrastructure of our own biology. It just goes to show that a single day's news is never just a list of random events. It is a brilliant, fragile web of interconnected systems.
And I'd like to leave you with one final thought to mull over, connecting the dots between the AI capabilities we discussed and that Alzheimer's discovery. We just saw how a spinal cord drug can unexpectedly treat cognitive decline and how an AI model like Compass can perfectly analyze 10,000 tumor samples to find hidden patterns. So what happens when we unleash these new trillion-parameter AI systems on our existing databases of overlooked, FDA-approved drugs? Perhaps the ultimate cure for our most complex, heartbreaking diseases won't have to be invented in a lab from scratch. It might just be sitting on a pharmacy shelf right now, waiting for an AI to connect the dots and realize it was mislabeled all along.